Hi, this is Dr. Michelle Robin with Small Changes, Big Shifts, Building Rhythm and Resilience. And I believe if you'll change one thing a month, one thing for the next 12 months, you'll change your life forever. Thanks for joining me on the journey. Welcome back to Small Changes, Big Shifts for a special show today on kindness. We're on day 15 of our kindness campaign of 31 days of kindness from the heartland. Mayor Q, welcome to the show. I want to give a quick bio. Mayor Lucas was sworn in as the 55th mayor of Kansas City on August 1st, 2019. What a ride it's been. As mayor, Quinton has prioritized making Kansas City's neighborhoods safer, creating more accessible and affordable housing and public transformation, fostering a healthier community, and improving basic services. Born and raised in Kansas City, Quinton has spent most of his life in the city's urban core. As a child, he moved often and experienced homelessness. Despite these challenges, Quinton remained focused on his schoolwork, earning academic scholarships to high school, college, and Cornell Law School before returning to Kansas City. Mayor Lucas, we've met a few times, and as I was thinking about this kindness campaign, I immediately thought of you. And thanks to Morgan, I got a chance to chat with you for a few minutes today. What do you think of when I say the word kindness?
You know, I think of the joy that we create in people when we are kind. That's actually what I'm spending a lot of time even working on these days. So, you know, we all know kind of that we should be kind. But I often think about what my steps to be kind to someone can do for someone else's day, in someone else's life. And in a world of challenge, and that is the story of 2020, I think that is so valuable and essential for us, really.
When you think about your journey, can you think of a story when someone was kind to you?
Oh, you know, it is, I mean, just limitless. But I don't think all the way back to childhood, and I barely remember this man, but I was a little kid, you know, single mom, so she was working all the time, and there was a nice neighbor down the street, old man and his wife, and I still remember I would go over there and read National Geographics. For all of the young kids, we had to actually read print magazines back then, and I would just spend hours looking at them. And I remember, I mean, to this day, one day he said, you know, you can take these old magazines with you. I said, what? Right? And he had what looked like hundreds. Now, silly young me, I didn't realize he was probably just trying to get rid of them. But I just thought, what a gift. And I could look at all of these things and learn so much information back at my own house. And that meant a lot. And it has been a lesson for me in many ways ever since.
Well, you know, we are in a challenging year in 2020, and I got a chance to hear Simon Sinek and Brene Brown last week on some conferences that I was on, and they've talked about that everybody's experiencing some level of trauma. You know, as I look back on 2020, I think about a few things that have happened in our city, that stories of people coming up and business leaders stepping up. Can you share some examples of how the business community has rallied around you, and maybe the police force had rallied around the business community and helping them? Maybe with like the cameras, things like that?
Yeah, a few different things. You know, one is that I think everybody has understood at times when it seemed impossible to do so. What do I mean by that? We had a stay-at-home order in Kansas City and throughout much of the country. And that was a time where it was really challenging. People didn't know where money was coming from, how they'd hang on, how they'd survive. But I would be on these calls with businesses and I would think that they would be ready to go at me and tear me apart. And instead what they said was, look, we understand what you're doing. We stand with you. How do we amplify your message? And I said, my God, right? It taught me not to actually judge what I thought was coming ahead. When I think about how folks have been good to our first responders, there was a time we all may forget when we thought we'd run out of hand sanitizer. And there was this premium on things like toilet paper, which never quite made sense to me, but hand sanitizer, everything under the sun. And there were a lot of businesses that helped us procure huge amounts of that. And I thought, how cool and how neat is that? This was the rare time, at least for a while, where everybody said we're in this together. And that pleased me. That really I think made things better for Kansas City, and it's helped us survive this pandemic much better than we would have thought before.
Now you've been mayor about 14, 15 months. What are some of the surprises that you're experiencing that maybe you didn't sign up for with this job?
So, it's funny because I was on the city council before. So I foolishly, like every teenager who goes out into the world, thought I knew everything, right? I mean, I know the issues, I know the policies, the laws, all that sort of stuff. Oh my God, I didn't know anything. And I think the volume of challenges, a day like today has, probably 20, 30 different things going on. It's that sort of experience that I have really grown to appreciate. And I think that as we are looking at the future of our community, me understanding and having that perspective of that I always have a lot to learn is going to be important. And then the other thing is just knowing what your internal guide is, whether it be, I guess you call it your North Star, because we have all been handed a lot of things we didn't expect for 2020. I planned to be on vacation in October. I planned all these other things. And instead, we're dealing with a very different world. But if you know why you're doing what you're doing each day, then you usually end up in the same place, the right place.
How do you stay in tune with that inner compass, and how do you know it's your inner compass and not the outside noise?
I try to, one, you talk to the people who've been special to you along the way, and sometimes it's hard. I actually got a call an hour ago or so from my sister who called me this weekend, and I hadn't called her back, right? It's making sure you make time for those people who are important. It's also making sure that you don't necessarily always listen to that which is the easiest to get to. Social media is an amazingly interesting thing, but in many ways it's not. Right? In exchange for being able to see what your college friend is up to, you also see every comment known to man. You start to believe that, oh my God, all the world thinks this. And the truth is, it's very different out there. And so that's why I've always thought, we should make sure that we get some break from that and try to listen to a lot of different voices.
Well, as I mentioned, we are in the middle of a 31-day kindness campaign. And as we're looking at that, here's today's, since you brought up social media, I'm going to tag on to that. Today's quote is, although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of overcoming it. And you've been a perfect example of overcoming it on many levels, and so has our city. And the act today is identify what social media does and doesn't do for you. And I'm glad you brought that up, because social media is a vehicle for us to
Right.
stay connected. It's not a vehicle to harm us.
Exactly. Right. And I think that the issue is that, yeah, we need to get back to the sort of thing, and I need to do this too, where I am sharing a message, I'm amplifying. And sometimes some ways the interactivity is what is undermining the good message of social media. And what I have learned over the last year, but really the last 6 months, is that I should be comfortable with the message I put out, such that I don't need to manage it immediately thereafter. I don't need to contextualize the picture. I don't need to contextualize the statement, because I should be thinking ahead of what is it that I'm trying to share? Why am I doing this? Why am I posting this? If I posted a picture of me working out, which I need to do, it's been a tough year. But if I post that picture, then what am I trying to say? As opposed to posting the picture and saying, oh no, this is just part of a fight, and then somebody else says this, and then I critique them and all of that. There is, I'll use an example, and it's a time when I didn't do right. There are a lot of people that you may call trolls on social media. They're trying to get under your skin. And one day someone got under mine, former radio host. And then I responded, and it was a put down, and it made me feel good for those 30 seconds. You're like, yeah, it's like dunking on somebody and having a tough line in basketball or something, which, by the way, I've never dunked on anyone. But it gives you that vibe. Whereas, and then after that, I thought, why'd I do that? It didn't change his statement. It didn't change mine. It kept the vitriol going. And we allowed thousands of people to see the vitriol between each other. I'm not about that. And I think we should do better. We can do better. And a big part of that is making sure that you're smart about what you say, and you're not using it to tear people down.
What's keeping you up at night right now?
Oh boy, there's a lot. There's a lot. Um, what keeps me up right now? We've got two big issues in Kansas City that are just a big concern of mine. One is violent crime. I continue to think about our young people who have so much promise, who have so much hope, and how we can and should do more for them. And so that's one. The second is I do have concerns about COVID-19 and where we go. Yesterday here at City Hall, we lost a long-time worker, a gentleman who retired just in the last year, who died of COVID-19. There are just so many questions out there right now of where to go, what to do, what should be open, what should be closed. I still sometimes just say, how can I make it so the pain that that man's family is enduring isn't something that's shared by someone else? And so that is a significant area of concern. And those are just a few of the things that help keep me bald.
Keep you bold. To those people listening to us live right now, thank you so much for sharing this conversation. I'd love for you to consider putting a story that you've heard around Kansas City, whether it's in the Overland Park or the KCK or the KCMO side. We are one community, or we're one human race. And I would love to see you share some stories. I think about the story of the business leaders buying COVID kits because they were first hard to get, so we could test them. I think about the story of the business leaders buying cameras for the police cars. We started thinking about Black Lives Matter. So I just want to tell you, you've been a great leader. We've been on stage together about a year ago for Junior Achievement. And I was so inspired, not only by your words, I was inspired by your actions and your vibration. When you meet people, I can kind of tell whether they're ding dongs or they're the real deal. And I was really impressed with you being the real deal. So I want to say, I just want to celebrate you today. On this show, we like to celebrate, guide, connect, which provide hope. And so we're celebrating you, and we're celebrating Kansas City today. If you had a couple words of wisdom of what we could do to help support this community, my listeners, my followers, anybody in this in the world that they could do, what would be the top 2 or 3 things that you would hope that we all would show up and give us guidance on?
I think there are a few different things, and I know all your listeners and you are folks that care and are engaged. Step one: never get too fed up to try to make a difference. And boy, is this a year where one could say, oh, this is happening and that's happening, and there's a presidential election and everything's different. No, we can't give up. We can't give up on our young people. We can't give up on our old people. We can't give up on anyone. And so I think that would be step one. In the face of frustrations, as your anger mounts, as your pain grows, understand the great impact that you can have on the world. So that would be the first one. Probably the second is to listen, and is to listen a lot more. When I think of our Black Lives Matter movement, when I think of some of the issues we're dealing with right now, I think one of the reasons we're at a point where we are discussing it so is because for a lot of years people would say things, but we didn't listen to them. We saw them as one-offs. We didn't understand the cries of a lot of people that were coming our way. And what I see now is that we get a chance to say, no, we do. And you may disagree, but if you listen, then sometimes you get to hear what's underlying the anger. I remember I was interviewing for a city council endorsement some years ago, and the group was tough on me. I mean, just unconscionably so. Why are you here? You should be somewhere else. You're a sellout. You don't love this community, yada, yada, yada. And at the end, you want to huff and puff, and you want steam coming out of your ears. But I sat back and just thought, where is that pain coming from? Where's that isolation coming from? It's coming from decades of what they feel is disinvestment. It's coming from decades of carnival parkers that they think came through their community and didn't really care. And I heard that, and that made me say, I'm not going to fight back in kindness, and I'm going to try to understand where they're coming from. I'm always going to try to listen.
Where do you think you learned that from?
I was in a lot of different environments when I was a kid. So I was born in the inner city. My mom moved us to central Kansas for a while when I was coming up. So I knew rural kids and some others. And then I graduated from high school at a suburban private high school in the Kansas City area. All very different environments. One wealthy at the end, the other's not. One black, the other's not. One rural and connected with farming, the other's not. And what that taught me was that first, a lot of people are the same. Kind of what you said on the throughout. A lot of people are going through the same issues. They may pronounce themselves in different ways, but it doesn't mean that they're not important. It doesn't mean they're not substantive, and it doesn't mean they're not worthy of our humanity. And so that's where I got it from my youth. And I have drawn upon it a lot of late, but it still has never led me astray.
So you gave us two. You got a third one? Or you want to stick with those two? I'm just going to give you an opportunity to close those thoughts.
I will stick with those two for now.
Great. What do you think is the biggest opportunity for our community the next 60 days?
Gosh, and that gets us to right after Christmas. How do we share love better? And it's weird. This sounds so ephemeral and all that sort of stuff, but people always ask me, how do we solve violent crime? How do we fix this, that, or the other? It's that we let people know that they're appreciated. We let communities know that they're appreciated. We mentor, and we mentor not because we're particularly astute in a certain area, but we mentor because we care about people and we love our community. I'm not an artist at all. I haven't done anything artistic in years other than looking at art. But, I would think perhaps, let's say if I was able to do an art class with, in fact, I did this a while back, folks with special needs, adults who are making artwork that they want to have shown in the mayor's office. And I have to remember, I need to put one of those pieces up. And I remember the conversations they have. And they said, Councilman Lucas is here. I'm like, who? He's not special or useful. But they were like, he's making time. That's what I think we need to do in the next 60 days in Kansas City. Maybe it's just a big love campaign. And, it's not money, right? We all get asked for it. We all do it. And you know what? And I've written some checks in my time. I know there are a lot of people who have written a lot more. But I have never gotten the same joy that I get from writing a check. And by the way, folks, keep donating. But I've never gotten the same joy from writing a check that I have when I've actually taken the time, shared my experience, and shown the love that I have in my heart for so many others.
Well, as I mentioned, we got a chance to share a stage here about a year ago, Junior Achievement, and it's very evident of your caring heart. And I'm curious, through this COVID experience, what has been a gift or two that you've received?
Yeah, and there are some, and it is certainly a silver lining. And I know of all the pain that lots of folks have gone through, either with the virus or economically or even educationally. But a few things I've gained. One, I had never really gone on a hike before. Silly me, never. I didn't know that even in a place like Kansas City, which, this is not Colorado or Washington State or West Virginia, but we have some neat hiking trails. And I got to see taking a 20-minute drive to Swope Park or Wyandotte County Lake Park or up to Parkville. I would have this chance to escape probably what were my daily concerns and really get with nature. Many of those walks I was with a friend that I got to know better because we weren't on devices, we weren't looking, we weren't consumed with everything else. Instead, we were just saying, what the heck? Let's explore our community and nature in a different way. And so I really enjoyed learning about that. One other thing was engaging with books and actually television again. So I don't watch cable news. It's for some, for others, it's not really a thing. Instead, I got into an American Revolutionary War series, Washington Spies. It was an AMC show. And I remember just being in some way taken by the costumes, the time, the stories, reminders of high school history. But I just thought, this is a good place to escape to. And escapism isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it just means allowing yourself to actually be a stronger person, to lean on more experiences and ideas and things you've read. That's what I've really gained from this, and I hope I keep it.
I've got a few more questions for you to keep you right on your time schedule because I know every minute matters.
Okay.
If you had a magic wand, what would you do?
Gosh. Um, there are so many options. If I had a magic wand, I would get everyone to see the humanity and really the commonality in each other. I think that if you see yourself, your spouse, your sibling, your child, your mother, your father, and the person across from you, it makes it a lot harder to shout at them, to hate them, to shoot them, to do any number of the things that ail Kansas City and our entire society. So I would create better understanding, create better empathy for all of us.
It reminds me of kind of what you said earlier. You didn't quite say it like this, but kind of understand why. Why is somebody hurting?
Mhm.
If we can understand why they're hurting, maybe we can start to have a real conversation and why
Yes.
we're hurting. Everybody's hurting at some level. And if we could actually just drop those walls down and say, you know what, what's really important here?
That's
You know,
exactly. Yeah. And, and I grew up with some pain in my life. We all did. And I do remember I'd have these times where I would have that rough edge, like a lot of us do. And sometimes when the person finally left, or you so annoyed your significant other, or you've done whatever, you almost wanted to say, "Don't go." I actually wanted you to just see that thing that was inside. And I think as we tear down walls, it's important for all of us to make sure that we're creating that pathway for someone else.
I've got one final question for you, actually, but I feel like I need to say two. If your family was listening today, what would you? This is not my final question, but I
Yeah.
feel like I need to ask this one. What would you say to your family today? Because I can't imagine how hard it is to watch somebody you love get torn up day after day by the media. What would you say to your
Yeah.
family today?
I would say thank you. They give me such perspective. My mother's in town, and I'll go over to her house sometimes and see her and the cats. And I'll have this opportunity where I talk for a little while about, oh, this happened or that happened. And, she'll listen, and then we just move on to something different. Um, Having people who understand you and knowing that there are people who will be there for you if I'm not mayor tomorrow and I'm long forgotten, it means so much. And we don't thank people enough for putting us in those types of positions. So that's probably what I would say.
Great. So here's my final question for you. What do you think your medicine is for the world? I believe everybody has a gift inside of them to share with the world. What do you think yours is?
Oh boy, it is. When I grew up, and I loved the play "A Man for All Seasons," the Robert Bolt play about Sir Thomas More. And the reason isn't because I'm super religious or anything like that. I am, but I'm not as religious as Thomas More. But I think as he rose in his career, never forgot where he came from and never forgot what he cared about. And as I've navigated quite a few worlds in my lifetime, and as I will continue to do so, I've never forgotten that experience of that elementary school age boy who was excited by the opportunity to read a bunch of National Geographics. That boy who was inquisitive, that boy who needed somebody to mentor him. And as I think about every challenge we have, I often think back to that. And so I would guess my gift would be always having that understanding as I go on and wanting to share my story with so many others, because I think in some ways it's unique, although all of ours are. But I think sharing my story gives us the opportunity to say to that next kid who's somewhere, and there are many of them, there's a way to this path for you. And that's what I'm interested in building long term.
Thank you for sharing your story with us today. Thank you for your heart. Shout out to Morgan and my good friend Chris, who are part of your team. And you're doing a great thing. I can say, I see you. I love you. I appreciate you. Keep shining your light bright. To all those listening today, feel free to give Mayor Lucas kind of a little round of applause where you're at. I know you've been sending some love in the comments. Those of you that are listening to this live, listening to this recorded next week after the election, remember to go out into the world with a soft heart, with soft ears and soft eyes. So Mayor Q, Keep shining.
I will.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you for having these conversations. It means so much to the world to have 30 minutes like this. So I appreciate you.
I sure appreciate you listening to Small Changes, Big Shifts. If you go to the website, smallchangesbigshifts.com, we'll have the show notes ready for you there. If this episode inspired you to make a small change that will lead to a big shift, please share with a friend. You can catch our episode on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and our website. And if you feel like it, please leave a rating or a comment. Be sure to subscribe so you can catch our episode next week. Blessings to you.